A global elite are meeting at Davos. They have big plans for the world after their previous plans have fallen apart. Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. The annual World Economic Forum took place last week in Davos, Switzerland. It's where thousands of influential business leaders, politicians, and others meet to talk about improving the state of the world. Or at least that's what they tell themselves. And I say, good for them. After all, the pandemic sure was hard on the world's elite. Okay, collectively they got $1.7 trillion richer. But what good is all that wealth if you can't show it off to your friends? After 2 long years, the rich can now take their private jets to meet at Davos again. Flaunting your growing wealth is so much better when you're all in the same expensive room drinking the same expensive wine. Exploiting global inequality pairs great with a full-bodied red. But I have to say, Davos was kind of disappointing this year. There were no celebrities. Because of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, there were no Russian oligarchs. And no Russian oligarchs means no Davos after-parties with Russian prostitutes, which was apparently a thing, according to the reporter who wrote the book Davos Man. He saw venture capitalists walk out of panel discussions on human trafficking and then fist bump each other because they got invited to a party thrown by a Russian oligarch who flew in prostitutes from Moscow. Like I said, improving the state of the world. So, no celebrities, no Russian oligarchs or prostitutes, not even an authoritarian Chinese leader turning on his, charm. In fact, China was barely at Davos thanks to zero COVID restrictions. What are people paying $29,000 a ticket for? A mediocre buffet? Talking to Jared Kushner? Watching Bill Gates surrounded by a dark cloud of sadness? We did not Photoshop that picture, by the way. That's just how Bill Gates looks now. But he wasn't the only one under a dark cloud in Davos. The global supply chain crisis, inflation, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and China's costly zero COVID policy all set the mood for this year's meeting. And the mood was pretty black, especially because of what's happening to one of the World Economic Forum's favorite topics, globalization. Business leaders warned that the era of globalization is ending. And that's a huge problem for the World Economic Forum. It's like the shiny, happy future that politicians and corporations spent years hyping is now crumbling before their eyes. I'll tell you why after the break. Welcome back. So the global elite had said globalization was the ticket to a better world. And how could they ever be wrong? Globalization linked nations around the world through trade. That means all of our economies are much more dependent on each other. Huge benefits to that, according to the International Monetary Fund.
The advantages of globalization are actually much like the advantages of technological improvement. They have very similar effects. They raise output in countries, raise productivity, create more jobs, raise wages.
This is because each country can specialize in what it does best. It's how your iPhone is assembled in China from parts made all over the place. We were told this is great for poor people in third world countries. But you know who it's really great for? Multinational corporations. By outsourcing to other countries, corporations can produce more with fewer resources. And that means more profit. Thanks to all of those poor people from third world countries. And it turned out globalization wasn't so great for working class people in rich countries like the US. We've lost millions of jobs, and we're still trying to find a way to deal with that. Wow, it's like these super rich elite were pushing a system that just made them richer at the expense of everyone else. But no, that can't be. Their hearts are too big, because they made us an even better promise. Globalization would bring peace and democracy to the world. This idea is sometimes called neoliberalism. The idea goes that if countries become more globalized and developed, They wouldn't just adopt the West's economic system, they would also adopt our liberal democratic political system. Who wouldn't want to be free and democratic, other than all the authoritarian regimes of the world? This was the idea behind President Bill Clinton normalizing trade with China back in 2000.
I believe the choice between economic rights and human rights, between economic security and national security, is a false one. Membership in the WTO, of course, will not create a free society in China overnight, or guarantee that China will play by global rules. But over time, I believe it will move China faster and further in the right direction, and certainly will do that more than rejection would.
Well, more than 20 years later, we can all look back on this and agree that it was totally stupid. So globalization didn't bring democracy to the world, but what about peace? After all, if economies depend on each other, that means our interests intersect. And there's no way war would break out, right? Right? Well, Ukraine would like to have a word. We're now seeing the ugly reality of globalization unfold. Things like food security, energy, and basic supplies are at risk thanks to the way we built the world's supply chains. Because it turns out all these super smart elites who just knew this would be the best way to manage the world were deluding themselves by pretending that authoritarian countries aren't really authoritarian. These corporate executives saw the world operating purely by economics. That's why they hate the idea of the world reverting to blocks defined by political alliance. But this head-in-the-sand reaction to political reality is bad. Because if you thought globalization was great for corporations, it's really great for dictators. Which is why Chinese leader Xi Jinping defended globalization in Davos. Russia has used globalization as a political weapon. So has China. They use companies' fear of losing access to markets and resources to play them like a fiddle. That's how China gets companies to apologize for talking about China's human rights abuses, or even for joking about the Chinese Communist Party. Authoritarian regimes have a great sense of humor. So the kind of people who go to Davos not only thought that globalization would make China a democracy, which was stupid, they also put themselves under China's thumb, which was even more stupid. But now, the pandemic and the Ukraine war are causing even the Davos elite to reassess globalization. Have they learned anything? More after the break. Welcome back. The World Economic Forum spent decades cheering on globalization, and now they're asking whether it's dead. They literally had a panel called "Is Globalization Dead?" And a lot of people wanted to know the answer. Did they eat some humble pie? Well, you can watch the panel online, but I can also give you a quick summary. Is globalization dead? La la la, I can't hear you. The answer is no. There, I just saved you half an hour. Of course, the World Economic Forum doesn't think globalization is dead. In fact, they're doubling down. You see, globalization isn't the problem. The world economy just needs more resilience. How do we get more resilience? More globalization. According to the International Monetary Fund in 2020, stopping globalization will not stop global threats but amplify them. The only remedy is international cooperation. Even now, proponents for globalization say that we need even more collaboration, like World Economic Forum founder Klaus Schwab.
We cannot prevent the war in Ukraine. We cannot take away COVID and so on, but we can create coordinated responses to those challenges. And that's what we are doing. And those challenges need the cooperation of business, civil society, and of course, mainly politics.
Now, to the reporter's credit, he asked Schwab if Davos had gotten it wrong with Russia.
But don't you need a moment of introspection to ask, how did it go so wrong? How did, Davos, and when I say Davos, I don't mean you personally, I mean the community, spent decades trying to bring Russia into the global community and be part of the global community, only for President Putin to literally go the opposite direction and start a war.
Yes, and we regret it. But if you look at global affairs, some certain developments go into the right direction, and even the Forum and even Davos cannot prevent that certain issues are not developing as we would like have them to do.
So basically, no introspection. It totally wasn't our fault. Obviously, we should still be in charge of the global economy. Look, I'm not saying that global cooperation is bad, or that global trade is bad, but clearly the way the Davos elite treat authoritarian regimes is bad. The Davos elite basically spent years saying we should bring authoritarians into the global community. They got high off their own supply, and now reality has punched them in the face. Now, some people are saying that globalization just needs to change, get more strategic. Like instead of offshoring your supply chains to places like Russia and China, friendshoring to countries who are allies. So friendshoring is basically don't work with dictators, which is generally good life advice. Speaking of good life advice, NATO's Secretary General told the Davos elite that freedom is more important than profit, and that economic ties with authoritarians creates vulnerabilities. I'm glad someone said this to the global elite, but also, it's pretty sad that someone had to say this to the global elite. Hey, did you know that authoritarian regimes that commit genocide and war crimes might also screw you in a business deal? So are the Davos elite going to listen? They don't want to, but Russia and China's own actions are forcing their hand for now. I mean, Russia didn't get invited to Davos, but only because Putin started a war. When the time is ripe, you'll see Russian oligarchs at Davos again, with their Russian prostitute-filled after-parties. Because Davos doesn't want to take political sides, it wants to see the world as just one big happy family with lots of profit-making potential. Too bad authoritarian regimes like Russia and China have already taken sides from the very beginning. So what do you think? Let us know in the comments below. And we could not make this show without support from viewers like you. You can help us for as little as $1 per episode at patreon.com/AmericaUncovered or on our exclusive censorship-free social media platform, AmericaUncovered.locals.com. The links to both are in the description below. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.